The year was 1868, and the lake lay still as glass beneath the sinking sun. A red sky bled across its surface, making the waters look like spilled blood. Beyond it rose the black frame of a bridge, its beams weathered and groaning with every gust. The settlers called it cursed. The Apache called it grave. Nayeli had chosen to build her home there anyway. She was 17 when she dragged the first stones to the shore. Alone, thin from hunger, but unyielding. Her dark hair hung in loose braids, streaked with dust, her palms calloused raw from weeks of work. She stacked stone on stone, set with beams into the earth, and watched her cabin rise like a stubborn challenge against a world that had taken everything from her. Her people had been scattered. Soldiers rode hard through their camps. Settlers took the rivers and meadows and called them their own. She had watched fire devour homes and smoke choke the air until the stars were gone. She was the last of her family, a lone girl on the edge of two worlds, and yet here she stood. Her house by the water, her fire in the hearth. The townsfolk who passed along the road spat in the dirt when they saw her. "Apache filth," they muttered. "Best not linger near the bridge. She'll bring the curse down on you." But Nayeli kept her chin high. She built, she fished, she hunted. Her feet knew every trail in the pines. She learned to weave reeds for baskets, to patch the roof when rain tore holes. Each task was survival, and survival was victory. Still, the bridge loomed above her, always there. Its planks moaned in the wind, its shadows stretching across the water like fingers. At night, she heard creaks when no one crossed, whispers that rode the current. Sometimes she thought she heard children laughing or crying, yet she told herself it was only the lake talking. She would not let fear claim her. Fear had stolen enough already. One evening, as smoke curled from her chimney and she mended a blanket by lantern light, the door rattled against a sudden knock. Her hand darted for the knife by the table. Few ever came this far. It was an old trader, face leathery from the sun, beard matted with dust. His mule huffed behind him, burdened with sacks of flour and coffee. "You shouldn't be here, girl," he said without stepping inside. His eyes slid past her toward the bridge. "Ain't safe when night falls." Nayeli stood her ground. "I'm not afraid of shadows." The trader shook his head. "Shadows ain't what you should fear. That bridge hides bones. Don't go under it, you hear? Leave it to rot." Before she could answer, he tugged the mule and vanished into the twilight, leaving only the crunch of hooves fading down the trail. She shut the door tight, though the warning clung to her chest like a stone. She told herself she would not listen. She had a home now. She would not be driven from it. Not by men. Not by ghosts. But later, when the wind picked up, the beams of the bridge groaned, and she could not help but shiver. Daylight brought labor, and labor left little time for fear. Nayeli rose with the sun, bare feet cold on the earthen floor, and set about tending her small domain. Smoke curled from her chimney as she stirred the pot of beans left soaking overnight. The taste was plain, but it filled her belly. Strength meant survival. The cabin was rough-hewn, its walls crooked, its roof patched with bark and hides. Yet to her it was a palace. She remembered her mother's voice, soft as river grass. A home is not the walls, but the fire inside them. Each spark she lit felt like defiance. She spent her days gathering what the land would give. Axe in hand, she split logs until blisters bled across her palms. She carried stones from the river bank to brace the walls. She cast lines into the lake, pulling trout that shimmered like silver coins. Each catch was roasted crisp over the fire, filling the cabin with the smell of smoke and salt. When she rested, she ran her fingers over the wooden beams she had raised herself. Every groove held a memory. Storms weathered, nights endured. She spoke aloud to the silence, whispering to the spirits of her kin. Yet the land reminded her she was never truly alone. Once, while returning from the forest, she found strange tracks in the mud near the bridge, boot prints deep and fresh, too large for her own. She followed them with wary eyes until they vanished into the undergrowth. That night, she slept with her knife close to her chest. Another time, she heard a splash while fetching water. She turned to see ripples spreading across the surface, but no fish broke through. No bird swooped low. Only the stillness remained, mocking her watchfulness. The settlers came now and then, their wagons clattering across the bridge. They rarely spoke to her, but their eyes lingered. Men spat tobacco into the water. Women whispered and turned away. Children pointed, calling her witch girl. She endured it, though her heart burned. She had seen enough hatred to know it could turn deadly in an instant. Still, she refused to bow. This was her lake, her home. Late that summer, a storm rolled across the horizon, thunder splitting the sky. Rain hammered the roof until it leaked in rivulets. The wind howled through the chinks in the walls. Nayeli fought to keep the fire alive, clutching her blanket as cold seeped into her bones. When dawn came, pale and weary, she stepped outside to find the bridge glistening with rain, and she swore she saw something standing on its far end, tall, unmoving, cloaked in mist. A figure that vanished when she blinked. She crossed her arms against the chill, told herself it was nothing, but the sight haunted her all the same. It was autumn when the bridge finally revealed itself. The night was still, the lake black as obsidian beneath a rising moon. Crickets sang in the reeds, and an owl hooted in the distance. Nayeli sat inside, needle in hand, mending a tear in her blanket by the warm glow of the lantern. Then she heard it, a scream, high, sharp, echoing from the water. It pierced the night like a knife. Nayeli dropped her blanket, heart hammering. For a long breath, she thought it was memory, echoes of the raids of fire and blood. But no, it came again, real, alive. She snatched the lantern, thrust her knife into her belt, and pushed into the night. Her bare feet slapped against the damp earth as she ran toward the bridge. The scream faded into silence. Only the creak of the beams greeted her now, groaning under no weight. The shadows beneath the bridge were thick, swallowing the lantern's glow. She stepped closer, breath clouding in the cold. The smell struck her first, iron, sharp like blood. The hair on her arms prickled. She lowered the lantern, letting its light ripple across the black water. Nothing. The bridge loomed silent above her. The reeds rustled. The lake lapped gently against the shore. But the scream was gone, swallowed whole by the night. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. She wanted to believe she had imagined it, that her loneliness had conjured voices where there were none. And yet the smell lingered. The air itself felt heavy, as if pressing down upon her shoulders. She turned back toward her cabin, clutching the lantern tight. But as she walked, she heard again, faint, almost a whisper, rising from the dark beneath the bridge. A child's cry. Nayeli froze. Her skin went cold. She did not step closer this time. She only stood there listening until the cry faded into silence once more. Her hand trembled against the lantern's handle as she whispered to the empty air, "No, I will not be afraid." But when she returned to her cabin and shut the door, she could not sleep. For deep down she knew, whatever haunted that bridge had spoken her name tonight, and it was only the beginning. Autumn deepened, and with it, the whispers in town grew louder. By day Nayeli kept her work, splitting wood, setting snares, smoking fish, but her nights grew restless. Each dusk the bridge seemed to lean closer, its black beams clawing at the moonlight. Sometimes she swore she heard breathing beneath it, steady as a sleeper's. Then came the disappearances. First a trapper, drunk on whiskey, vanished after crossing the lake's edge. Then a boy from a settler's family failed to return with the goats. Search parties combed the woods with lanterns, but they found nothing save broken reeds and mud churned at the waterline. And though no one could prove it, their eyes turned toward Nayeli. She felt the shift in the air when she walked through the settlement to trade for salt or tobacco. Men muttered under their breath. Women pulled children close. The blacksmith spat in her path, iron hammer clutched like a weapon. One evening, outside the general store, a woman hissed loud enough for her to hear. "She's a curse, that girl. The bridge takes what it wants, and she's feeding it." Nayeli's hand curled tight around the strap of her basket. She wanted to shout that she fed no one, that she asked only to be left in peace. But silence was safer. Words could spark fire in a dry season. Not all spat poison. An older woman named Clara, widow of a rancher, offered a quiet warning when Nayeli passed her gate. "Keep your lamp burning bright at night, child," Clara whispered. "I've seen things by that bridge I'll not speak of, things best left buried." But warnings could not shield her. Trouble arrived under torchlight. One night, 3 settlers staggered from the saloon, whiskey thick on their tongues. They came to her cabin, shouting slurs, daring each other closer. Glass shattered as a stone crashed through her window. "Come out, witch," a voice bellowed. "Come face men. If you're no ghost yourself." The fire inside Nayeli burned hotter than her fear. She seized her hunting knife, kicked open the door, and stood in the torchlight. The men jeered, circling her. One lunge, hand outstretched. In a breath, her blade flashed, carving a shallow line across his arm. He howled, stumbling back, blood darkening his sleeve. The others pulled him away, cursing, promising they'd return. "This ain't over, girl," one spat. "Next time, we'll bring rope." They left her cabin trembling, her breath sharp in the cold air. Yet she did not weep. She had survived worse. She would not yield. Still, their threat hung over her like storm clouds. Days later, she returned from hunting with 2 rabbits slung across her belt. The sun sank low, painting the lake in fire. She stopped near the bridge, staring at its shadow beams. The memory of that scream still echoed in her chest, sharp as glass. Something pulled at her then, an instinct, a voice from deep within. She set down her catch, took her lantern, and stepped beneath the bridge. The air there was colder. Damp earth sucked at her boots. Cobwebs clung to the beams. Her lantern swung, casting long fingers of light across the soil. And then she saw it, a corner of bone protruding from the ground, pale against the dark mud. Her breath hitched. She dropped to her knees, scraping away at the soil with trembling hands. More bones emerged, ribs, a skull cave at the side, brittle as driftwood. The stench of rot rose, though the bodies were long dead. She dug further, frantic now. Her lantern illuminated trinkets buried alongside the bones. A child's doll with one glass eye, a beaded belt torn and stained, arrowheads snapped in half. Recognition struck her like a blow. These were not strangers. These were her people. Apache men, women, children, slaughtered and hidden beneath this cursed bridge. Her hands shook as she held the doll, her throat tightening until she could barely breathe. She remembered her younger sister clutching such a toy before soldiers stormed their camp. She had thought her lost forever to smoke and screams. Tears blurred her vision, but rage burned hotter. The settlers had not only taken lives. They had buried the evidence of their crime beneath the very road they traveled daily, hiding their guilt in plain sight. Nayeli pressed her forehead to the cold earth. She whispered prayers to the spirits trapped here, her voice breaking with each word. Then she vowed this truth would not remain buried. But even as she made that oath, footsteps rustled in the brush. She snapped upright, lantern high. A man stepped into the glow. Jacob, a quiet neighbor who lived on the far ridge, known for trading pelts. His hat shadowed his eyes, but his voice was steady. "You shouldn't be here, Nayeli." Her knife flashed in her grip. "You knew," she hissed. He hesitated, then nodded once. "We all knew. Some stayed silent. Some joined in. It was years ago, before you were born. They feared your people, took their land, killed them, buried it deep. Why tell me now?" Her voice cracked. "Because you found what you shouldn't." His tone was grave. "And they'll kill you to keep it hidden." The words fell heavy as stone. He looked at her, regret in his gaze. "Leave this place, girl. Tonight, before they decide your silence ain't enough." But Nayeli shook her head. Her hands clenched around the doll, the knife. "I will not run. Not again. Not ever." The nights grew darker. Every creak of the bridge felt like a warning. Every rustle in the brush felt like an ambush waiting. Word spread fast, too fast. Perhaps Jacob had spoken, or perhaps another had seen her digging. But soon the whispers turned to pointed words. The settlers gathered in low voices outside the saloon, stealing glances toward the lake. The blacksmith spat, "Time we rid ourselves of her." Nayeli felt in the air, sharp and tense, like the moment before lightning splits the sky. One evening, Clara the widow found her near the well. The old woman's hands trembled as she pressed bread into Nayeli's palms. "Child," she whispered, "you've stirred the bones. They'll come for you. I can't stop them. None of us can. You must decide, bury the truth again or be buried with it." Nayeli's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to beg someone to care, but she saw the fear in Clara's eyes. The widow meant well, but fear bound her as surely as rope. That night, Nayeli sat by her fire, staring at the doll. She traced the beaded belt, the snapped arrowheads. Her people's voices echoed in her memory. The cries, the prayers, the silence that followed. She felt them pressing around her, waiting. Was she their last hope? Her reflection shimmered in the lantern's glass. She saw not just a girl, but a keeper of memory. If she stayed silent, the bridge would remain their grave, their story untold. If she spoke, she would risk death. Outside, the wind picked up. The bridge groaned, louder than before, as the earth itself strained beneath a heavy burden. She whispered to the shadows, "I will not hide you. I will not let them bury you again." The words steadied her, but fear still gripped her chest. She knew the settlers would come. Their eyes had promised as much. She rose, knife at her belt, lantern in hand, and stepped outside into the dark. The bridge loomed ahead, vast and silent, as though it listened. And in that silence, she felt a presence, not flesh and blood, but something deeper, a weight of sorrow, of anger, a truth long denied. She did not turn away. She stood on the shore and whispered to the unseen, "If they come for me, stand with me. Let them see what they tried to bury." The night held its breath. Then a plank on the bridge cracked, loud, sharp, like a gunshot. Nayeli froze, staring at the black silhouette against the moon. And she knew whatever lived in those shadows would not remain silent much longer. The first snow dusted the ridges when the settlers came for her. Nayeli knew it before she saw the glow. The wind carried it first, the acrid sting of smoke that didn't belong to her hearth. Then came the voices, rough with drink, sharpened by fear. Man, more than a handful. She rose from her stool, heart pounding, knife already in hand. Outside, torchlight flickered against the cabin walls, shadows twisting like devils across the wood. A boot slammed against her door. The timbers shuddered. "Come out," which someone roared. "Come meet judgment." The door splintered on the second blow. Wood cracked. Hinges groaned and the night poured in. A dozen men, faces twisted, eyes fever bright. Guns glinted in their fists. Rope dangled from one man's belt, swaying in the torchlight. Nayeli's breath caught sharp, but her grip tightened on the knife. She would not kneel. Not to them. Not to anyone. She darted toward the back window, leaping through as glass shattered around her. Cold air slapped her face as she landed hard in the dirt. The men shouted, boots pounding after her. She ran for the only path that remained, the bridge. The night roared with chaos. Flames licked her cabin as a torch struck its walls. Smoke billowed, carrying with it every memory she had built. Her sanctuary crumbled in fire, but she did not falter. She ran, lantern swinging in one hand, knife glinting in the other, her feet pounding the frozen ground. Behind her, the mob gave chase, voices snarling. "Hang her! Burn the witch!" The bridge loomed ahead, black and vast against a silver lake. Its planks groaned as she set foot upon it, her lantern casting long, dancing shadows across the beams. The men surged after her, heavy boots thundering on the wood. Halfway across, she stopped, turned, faced them. Her chest heaved, but her gaze was steady. She held the lantern high. Its glow lit her face, fierce and unbroken. "You buried them here," she cried, her voice cutting through the howling wind. "My people, your crime, their bones lie beneath your feet." The men faltered, just for a breath. Then laughter barked from one throat. They were savages. "We did what needed doing." Others sneered. One raised his pistol. "And now we'll bury you, girl." Nayeli lifted the lantern higher. her eyes flashing. No, tonight the bridge will bury you. The wind surged, tearing across the lake. The beams of the bridge groaned louder, deeper, as though the very wood remembered. The men glanced around uneasily. Then came the sound. A crack, sharp as a rifle. Then another. The planks beneath their boots trembled, and from the water below, voices rose. Low at first, like the murmur current. Then louder, a chant, deep and sorrowful, echoing with rage. The men's bravado faltered as shapes stirred beneath the surface. The lake rippled. Arms of shadow reached upward. Faces, pale and gaunt, broke through the water. Apache warriors, women, children, spirits of the slaughtered, rose with the tide. The settlers staggered back, shouting, crossing themselves. Torches fell, hissing as they struck the water. Nayeli did not flinch. She lowered her lantern, her voice steady, strong. You hid them in the earth, but the earth does not forget. The spirits surged onto the bridge, which screamed beneath the weight of the dead returned. The mob panicked. A man fired wildly, the shot echoing across the lake. Another dropped his rope and stumbled, clawing at the railing. But the spirits closed in, dragging them down, water churning red in the moonlight. Nayeli stood unmoving as men were torn from their feet, their screams swallowed by the lake. The bridge shuddered, beams splitting, nails shrieking free. Still, she did not run. She lifted her face to the storm and whispered to the spirits, "Justice, not vengeance." And the dead obeyed. Not all the men were taken. Some fled, scrambling back to shore, stumbling into the night with terror etched in their eyes. The bridge still once more, though the cries of the drowned lingered like smoke. When silence fell, only Nayeli remained standing. The lantern flickered weakly in her hand, its glow casting a halo around her. Her cabin smoldered in ruin behind her, but the lake lay calm now, moonlight reflecting its silver skin. She had not been broken. She had not bowed, but she was no longer alone. The bridge had spoken. Morning came pale and cold. Mist drifted across the lake, softening the ruin. Nayeli stood barefoot on the shore, her body aching, her clothes singed with smoke. The lantern hung at her side, its flame long gone. The settlement was quiet. Word of the night had spread faster than any fire. Those who had fled spoke of shadows risen, of voices in the water, of a girl who stood unbroken while the dead answered her call. They feared her now more than ever. Yet fear was no longer her burden to carry. It was theirs. Jacob came at dawn, hat in hand, his face pale. He stopped a distance from her, unwilling to step closer to the bridge. "It's over," he said, voice rough. "They'll not come again. Not after that." Nayeli's eyes held his. "It is not over. Not while the bones lie here." He swallowed hard. "What will you do?" Her voice was steady, calm as a lake. "I will keep this place. I will guard their memory. And when children ask why the bridge groans, they will know the truth, not the lies." Jacob bowed his head, shame heavy on his shoulders. "Then may the Lord give you strength." He turned and left, vanishing into fog. Nayeli lingered, her gaze fixed on the water. She thought of her mother's voice, her sister's laugh, her people's songs carried by wind and fire. They were gone but not forgotten. Not anymore. She knelt at the shoreline, pressing her palm to the earth. "Rest now," she whispered. "Your story lives." The water lapped gently, almost an answer. She rose, shoulders squared, eyes clear. She was no longer just a girl building a cabin by the lake. She was a keeper of truth, the bridge between the living and the dead. The settlers might whisper, might fear, might call her witch or ghost. Let them. The truth was carved deeper than fear. The bridge would remember. She would remember. And in the silence of dawn, the land felt less empty. The wind softened. The bridge stood still. The spirits, for now, were at peace. Yet in the quiet, a voice seemed to linger, a whisper carried across the lake. Not sorrow this time, but something else. Gratitude. Nayeli closed her eyes and let it wash through her. So, what do we take from this tale? Maybe it's this. The frontier was not only a land of conquest and claim, but of memory. And memory does not die easy. A Girl Alone by a Haunted Bridge proved that. If her story stirred you, share it. Let it cross more bridges, so the dead may never be buried in silence again.